Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. Director Jake Murray spent his formative theatrical years at Manchester's Royal Exchange Theatre, a theatre co-founded by his father, Brian Murray, where he was co-artistic director for the studio space with current Exchange artistic director Sarah Frankcom. 10 years after leaving Manchester, he is back in the city with his Durham-based Elysium Theatre Company, set up in 2016 and already nominated for a Manchester Theatre Award for its debut production last year of Days of Wine and Roses at 53.2. His latest production, to be performed at Home Manchester in May 2018, is of a Pullitzer Prize-winning play that has rarely been seen in the UK. A month before the production opened in Manchester, I spoke to Jake in a dressing room at Home and asked him first of all to explain more about the play.
Well, the play is Jesus Hot the A-Train by Stephen Adly Guirgis, I think his name is pronounced. And Stephen is a New York playwright, and this is one of his first plays, and it was really one of his big breakthrough plays. And he's now well established in America, and this show is often done all across the States. It's been done twice in London. It's never been done in the regions, never been done in the north, so this is a bit of a scoop for us. We were quite amazed that we got it in that space. And it's an extraordinary play. It's only 5 actors, and it's a prison drama. It's set in Rikers Island in New York. And it's 2 prisoners. One is Angel Cruz, who has been arrested for shooting the leader of a kind of Mooney cult in the bum. In the script, the ass. Yes. And what he was trying to do was rescue his childhood friend Joey from this cult. Spent 2 years planning it, kidnapped him, got to deprogram him, but it didn't work. And Joey went back to the cult, and out of frustration, Angel went in waving a gun and shot this guy in the arse. So he's on trial. Awaiting trial, as it were, and he's put on Rikers Island. So he's not officially a convict, but it makes him incredibly vulnerable in the prison. And he's attacked and beaten up and raped and all these different things. This all happens off stage. And then in the course of him awaiting trial, the Reverend dies, Reverend Kim. So it becomes murder. And in the other cell next to him, and basically they're both in solitary on Rikers Island, Angel to protect him, and the other guy is Lucius Jenkins, who's African-American, from Florida, and he's a serial killer. He's killed 8 people that we know of. And he was a drug addict, an alcoholic, paranoid, schizophrenic, manic depressive. And every day they're allowed an hour in the sunlight, and they're put in cages and they're allowed, and it so happens that they're there at the same time. And Angel is the only man that Lucius has spoken to, other than prison guards, for years. Lucius is on death row, fighting appeals, trying to make sure that he doesn't get executed. And what happens is that the power of the story is that Lucius helps Angel survive in the prison. He picks him up, as it were, gives him advice, and becomes a kind of mentor. But what's happened with Lucius is that he's found God. He's had a conversion experience, and it's transformed him. He sees himself as a different man, a man who no longer is this dark, murderous, violent human being. And he tries to give Angel this experience to lift him out of the depression that he's in. And it becomes a kind of battle for the soul of both characters. And the other characters are 2 prison guards, the good cop and the bad cop, Valdez, who I suppose you'd probably call him a Trump supporter, very right-wing, very absolutist, completely moral. If you're a criminal, you've forfeited your rights, therefore can be treated like scum. Yeah. And the other one, Charlie D'Amico, who Valdez has fired from his job because he's become too friendly with Lucius. And the 5th character is Mary Jane Hanrahan, who is a public attorney, public prosecutor, or public defender, who spends her life trying to get people like Angel off. And it's the mix of all these different characters, and it's electric. It's got all that kind of power of a Scorsese film or a Tarantino. It's got that language, that kind of adrenaline. But it's also one of those plays which is very visceral, but it also has this incredible depth. It's all the big questions about justice and law, and can a serial killer be redeemed? Can they turn themselves around? Can someone who's committed these appalling crimes become a good person? Is it right to try and save people? So that, was Angel right to try and rescue his friend? It's also about responsibility, taking responsibility for what you've done, because Angel insists that he didn't intend to kill Reverend Kim, therefore he's innocent. Yeah. And Lucius and Reverend Kim is dead. You need to own that in the way that I own what I've done. Then you have Mary Jane, who bends the rules to try and get Angel off, and then you have these 2 other policemen. And it's primal theatre. It blows the cobwebs off when you read it. I remember reading it the first time, just being absolutely stunned by it. you can't put it down. It's very funny. It sounds very dark.
Yes.
It's very, very funny.
Yeah.
Because the characters have a real gallows humour, so there's a lot of kind of humour in it while they make fun of each other. But it's one of those wonderful plays with 5 actors, which seems to be about everything, even the meaning of life.
Yeah.
But it's also brilliant, gripping entertainment. So it's kind of the holy grail of fantastic modern theatre.
Yeah. Well, politically, it sounds like it's very American.
Yes.
The actual references, but does that translate to the situation that we're in
over here? Oh, totally. I mean, I think first of all, because we're so immersed anyway in American culture, none of the references are alien to us.
No.
So you still got, all the issues of Black Lives Matter. You've got atheism, religion, politics, all that kind of stuff. And the New York world is very recognisable. But most of all, it's stunningly universal. And although the play, the brilliance of the play is that although there's this central debate about whether there's a God, it doesn't tell you what to think.
Yeah.
But every point of view is put there. So you come out as confused and lost as the characters. But they are those questions that everybody asks in their private moments. Does life mean anything? Do you know what I mean? Is there justice in the world, or is it just corruption and evil and exploitation? Is there a redemption? Is there not a redemption? It's in those very private moments. It's asking all those really big questions that we all ask. So, and it's just very entertaining. So I think completely accessible in that respect. Yeah.
So, how do you want audiences to be coming out from that? Do you think that they're still going to be disagreeing, but maybe in a more informed or thoughtful way? Do you think?
Yeah, I think it's the best way of putting it is I want them to be zinging with the energy of the play.
Yeah.
It's a play where I was just telling about Tenaway actors today. You want them to not draw a breath from the beginning to the end. You just want them completely on the edge of their seats. And I want the audience, because there will be some people who come out going, I agree with the character that says there's no God, and others who say I agree with the character who says there is God. I want people to be coming out engaged with what the play is about what the play is about, so that they're actually going out and they're asking themselves the questions, and maybe, as you say, getting clearer about what they think.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in the best element of the script, as I say, is it doesn't preach, it doesn't tell you this is the answer, this is the character that I agree with, because that's how life is. In the end, if it was clear what the answers to these things were, we'd all have answered it ages ago.
So you can't find the playwright's opinion in there?
No, well, I think the playwright is very divided.
Yeah.
He's since written plays, which he wrote a very famous play that was done at the Almeida in London called The Last Days of Judas Iscariot, which was this weird kind of cross between a poetic drama about Christ and Judas and Monty Python.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of Marx Brothers weird kind of trial where Sigmund Freud comes up and Pontius Pilate and all those different things. And he writes about the fact that he was brought up a Catholic and is simultaneously drawn to that and also repelled by it. So there's a side of him which is rebelling against it and a side of him which goes, but there's something here. And I think that's what the play is really about. It's about the fact that it's not about it's not about certainty, it's about uncertainty. It's about the fact that it's hard to know.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So it's not a Richard Dawkins or a poem.
No.
It's although in some sense it's an argument between the two of them, it's more about how most of us feel, I think, if we're really honest, is we don't know.
Yeah.
We have strong leanings towards, and it's one of those great plays which whenever ever any character says something, there's always a yes but. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's to me that's exciting theatre.
Yeah.
Where you're plunged into a maelstrom rather than just quietly told what to think.
Yeah. A lot of art, even to stand-up comedy, seems to have come from people delving into their Catholic upbringing.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's because it's such a complicated to say. I think because it's such a comprehensive worldview.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's got full of contradictions.
Yeah.
And I think I have an ex-Catholic mother. I wasn't brought up with any religion, but my awareness of Catholics is that they're drawn to the higher side of it, the idea of something beautiful and pure and merciful.
Yeah.
But they're also in conflict with the darker side of it. And I think that's the reason why it's so powerful, is that we're all in different ways struggling with the angels and the demons in us. And so it still remains a metaphor for really how all of us feel. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think if that's what the play is really about, the struggle between angels and demons. So in all of us, do you know what I mean? It's in all of us. So, but you don't have to be Catholic to appreciate it. And in fact, there isn't a Catholic word in it. No one says, "Hello, I'm a Catholic." But there's the characters are from Latino and different backgrounds, and Irish backgrounds, which obviously are.
Yeah.
But it's not pushed, so it's really a universal play. And whenever it's been done, it creates an enormous impression on the audience. The original production was directed by Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yes.
And that came to London, and it was It had John Ortiz in it, who's now a very well-established actor in America. And I know people who saw it, and from all sorts of different backgrounds, whether they were Hindu or Catholic or atheist, and they still found it one of those plays that they've never forgotten.
Yeah.
Because it really goes to the heart of something.
Now, why do you think it's not been done very often in this country? Are you finding that it's a hard one to put on in rehearsal?
No, the interesting thing is that it's actually it's perfect to be done because it's only 5 actors in a very simple set. It's one of those plays where it's very
easy
much
to tour then.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think it's more that, well, this is part of the point of our company. Now, I've worked in London and I've worked in Manchester and I've worked in other regional theatres, and what used to happen when there was a full network of regional theatres is that the regional theatres would premiere plays that were done in London.
Yeah.
So you know, if David Hare was on in London, they would then get done all over. That doesn't really happen in the same way that it used to. And when I moved to Durham, which is where I am now, I realised the big struggle in London, if you're putting work on the fringe or having your own company, is what do you put on? Because there's no point in doing a revival of a play that's already been done in London because it's already been seen. There's no point really doing a classic because everyone can go and see those in the theatres that are, you know, they're being done all the time.
Yeah.
So all you're left with really is a new play or an undiscovered masterpiece, which is not easy to find.
No.
But when you come out of London, you realise there's this incredible reservoir of stunning playwriting that's never been seen anywhere outside London. So what I did was meet up with an actor friend of mine in Manchester, and I thought, well, the sensible thing is let's put theatre on in the north again. And what we did was we've just spent the last few months, or half a year, just reading everything. Jez Butterworth, Harold Pinter, Polly Stenham, Laura Wade, Mike Bartlett, all these different playwrights, and gone, we're excited by this, we want to do that. And then they become regional premieres.
Yeah.
So the first play we did was Days of Wine and Roses by Owen McCafferty, which had never been done in the North East, not been done in Manchester. The only other production it had had outside London was at Keswick, which is bizarre because it's a two-hander.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're looking at lots of other plays. We will diversify a little into some classics as well. But there's lots of wonderful shows that have been at the Donmar, the Almeida, the National, the Oral Court, which have just never been seen. And they're robust. You know, they're from America, they're from Canada, they're from South Africa, from all over the world. Yeah. But they work. And so the goal of the company is really to bring that material to the north. Yeah. And obviously I have connections here in Manchester, so that was the first place to go. And I'm making the connections now up in the northeast. And there's a lot of excitement about it because outside Manchester, there's an awful lot of talent goes down south. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of talent here in Manchester now, amazing amounts. And so saying no, I'm actually coming north, and I wanted to bring this work here is I'm finding a lot of excitement and support, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly rings true what you're saying, because I can remember years ago things like David Hare's Skylight coming to the library, exactly. Not that long after it had been in London, but. Now, as editor, obviously I read reviews that come in from my London reviewers, and I know these big names like James Graham.
Yes.
I've never seen one of his plays because the first one ever to come to Manchester, he's coming in the week after next for the Lowry. And it's a tour from the London production.
Well, there you go.
So you're right, we don't see all this. I mean, all the stuff that's been at the Royal Court over the past 10 years.
Absolutely.
He's on at the Royal Court, West End, disappears. I
mean, Nick Payne has never been done up here.
No.
There's lots of these fantastic playwrighs that Northern companies should be and can put on. Yeah. And there's also an awful lot of stuff like David Mamet and Sam Shepard that hasn't really been seen in the north. Yeah. And up in the northeast, in Durham, they've only had a theatre a major theatre for the last few years. Yeah. They're starting to put work on, and it means that there's a lot that you can do, exciting work that the whole of the country needs to see.
So why is that not happening anymore? Is it a finance problem?
I think it is, yeah. I mean, yes. Well, theatres are forced to put on less than they used to. That's the problem. There are funding problems. I think the cuts and everything. Yeah. Which means that it's harder to be able to put on a lot of productions, and also to maintain a momentum where the audience are happy to come and see new plays and contemporary plays, because it tends to be the case that classics are the ones that bring the audiences in. Yeah. And that's where a company like ours, which is quite small scale, we can put these works on in smaller spaces. But I think there's a will to do it. A lot of companies also are always looking for their own new plays. So like up in Newcastle, you have Live, which do a lot of their own work. Same in Liverpool, etc., etc. I think the amazing thing about British theatre, having worked in it for a quarter of a century now, which I never thought I'd say, is that the will never goes. Do you know what I mean? No matter how hard it gets, every theatre wants to keep doing exciting work, wants to keep being ambitious. There's some amazing stuff going on in Leeds and in Liverpool, the Exchange, and here at home, their programming is very exciting. So, and it's frustrating that it's not better known. You know, London still doesn't really look outside, and I just think there's a lot of creative talent in the whole country, and it needs to be championed. Yeah.
Well, here in Manchester, I know you know Manchester very well from the past. You worked here a lot. I heard an interview not that long ago, I think it was in York, where they said, here, you can't really have a career just here as an actor or a director or whatever. It's really difficult, but you can in Manchester. Because Manchester's got such a massive scene around it, and there's a massive fringe scene as well. So do you think that's true, that you can just have a career in Manchester theatre?
Yes, I do. I think it's interesting. I was saying this the other day, because what's been lovely about coming back was that when I left in 2008, I was talking about. I said to my actor friends from Manchester, what Manchester needs is a fringe scene. And at the time, David Slack was doing 24/7 at JB Shaw's. But coming back, there's now 53-2, there's the Hope Mill, is it the King's Head and Arms or something in Salford?
The King's, and
there's lots of other smaller venues. And there's Manchester ADP, Manc Made, there's so much going on. And then you've also got, when I was here, there was the Library, the Exchange and the Contact. Now you've got the Lowry, which obviously was started open when I was still here. Home you've got, and then you've also still got Bolton and Oldham doing exciting stuff. And from what I understand, Oldham is really revitalised now, and it's always been the case, I think, that there's outside London, maybe I may be wrong about this, nowhere has got as many theatres as Manchester and Greater Manchester, you know. And I think particularly also with all the relocation of the BBC to the north, and so much film and television being made up here, you can have a career up here. It's harder in York because there's only really one or two theatres. And the interesting thing about the region I'm in, the North East, is that there's lots going on in Newcastle, but actually the whole region has got loads of beautiful theatres, all looking for material. And I sometimes wish that all my friends would just relocate to the North East, and then we just, you know. And there's no shortage of talent. There's no shortage of audiences that want to see work.
It's probably more spread out though there.
Yes, it is. But that's useful because you could legitimately tour just in the North East. You could do a month where you went from Durham to Hexham to Washington to, do you know what I mean, Sunderland. And I think, you know, North Easterners are wonderful people. So there's a lot of potential there. And I'm sure it's true of other parts of the country. But there is something special about Manchester. It really is. It's very vibrant now.
You left here in, was it
2008?
2008. That's 10 years ago.
10 years,
At the time, you were doing some great work. I remember at the Royal Exchange. I remember seeing some of your work in the main house, and you were co-running the studio.
Yes, that's right.
Frankcom. Did you feel, because you've been brought up really, not just in Manchester but in the Royal Exchange, you must have lived through that place because your dad was involved in setting it up. So did you feel that you had to make a break at that point and go off?
I'd been there for 7 years, and as you say, it had played quite a major role in my life since I was kind of born. And I think I was really proud of the work that I did. It was hard because it was a steep learning curve. A lot of pressure, but I was allowed to do some extraordinary plays and work with some amazing people, and I also saw a lot of amazing work going on in the building. 7 years is a good time to be in one place, and I think I needed to really spread my wings and refresh myself, and went off and did something completely different for a while. But it's been really nice evolving over the last 10 years and exploring different ways of doing theatre and spreading my wings as a director, because when you're working in a big theatre like the Exchange, the pressure financially is huge. So you don't tend to find that you kind of had to play it safe at certain points, make certain decisions in certain ways. And the work that I've done since, I have been able to now expand and try different things. And it's lovely now to be building up my own small company with my own ensemble with actors that I've helped train and believe in doing the plays I want to. Yeah, I've always been fairly independently minded in that respect, and this is a lovely way of doing it.
Yeah. When you were doing your own work, you've done work for young people. You've done work with much older actors as well.
Yes.
You had a company where you were actually trying to find work for older actors.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. That was through a man called James Rhys Evans, and the goal of that was to try and counteract the kind of ageism in our society and the idea that human beings cease to be interesting when they hit 60. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And James is a bit of theatre history. He founded the Hampstead Theatre in London.
Yeah.
He did all sorts of first productions of Lorca and Marguerite Duras and even Pinter.
He's got quite a publishing career as well.
Yes,
Anybody who studied theatre will have some of his books.
Absolutely. He's a wonderful writer. He actually writes very richly. And I think I remember thinking that the reason I partly got behind it was this thing that the irony is that we are very youth conscious at the moment. And aside of that, that's great. But at the same time, we're kind of running away from the fact that we stay alive all the way to the moment when we die.
Yes.
And the irony is that actually, if you look at world theatre, canon of Western theatre anyway, well, some of the greatest parts are over Willie Loman, Danforth, James Tyrone, Long Day Journey Tonight, King Lear, Oedipus, and Amanda, women as well, Amanda Wingfield, Mary Tyrone, great parts for older performers. Because the idea being that these great actors summarise their work with these final great plays like The Tempest, and artists who had spent a lifetime writing scripts, Ibsen, Strindberg, all these different people, so you had a whole spiritual journey which made the light plays often very rich. So it's like, well, actually, why are we not doing this? Because that's the whole point. That's the interesting thing about theatre is that you've got a kind of document of every facet of our lives, from playing children all the way to adults. So that wasn't difficult. That was a really interesting thing to do, and it was very interesting dealing with. I did a very interesting play called Mercy, which was all about a man and a woman dealing with being in love with each other in their 70s, and it was just as vibrant as anything else, and was very rich because it had a kind of depth to it. So, and there's all those Beckett plays, and I mean it's. I suppose I remember having to give a speech about it and saying that if you say that old people are not interesting, you're basically saying that life is meaningless. You're basically saying when you stop being desirable and sexy, we're not interested in you. Do you know what I mean? Whereas in fact, we go on, we all become old, and we spend our lives interacting with our parents and our grandparents, and those relationships are really rich. So it was really nice to explore that. As well as, yes, as you say, the work I've done with kind of young people and children. Yeah,
I don't know whether you heard the work that Fairley McDermott and Improbable were doing with older actors with improvisation.
Oh, yes.
I interviewed him a couple of years ago. He was talking about that.
Yeah.
And he was saying because a lot of them had dropped out of performing on stage because they couldn't remember lines. So with improvisation,
it's
of course, you don't need
doing it. Yeah. Well, that is a thing. It's an interesting one. No one can remember lines anymore.
No.
You don't have to be old to not be able to remember lines. But it was interesting. I remember working with when you worked with actors who had gone through the rep system. I remember working with Dennis Quilley and John Ringham.
Yeah.
They never lost the ability to learn lines because it was like a muscle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They had to learn a whole play every week.
Yeah.
It's just they embarrassed younger actors. Do you know what I mean? But there was also a richness to it because you also this is what we've forgotten. We don't prize wisdom in our society.
No.
And the whole endless middle-aged blah white men on this. But actually, it's like politicians. When politicians have retired, they're often really interesting. And they're able to say things that they couldn't say when they were actually.
They've got the same pressures on them to conform.
And they can suddenly talk honestly about what's important. And they suddenly turn out to be very humane people. You say, why weren't you like this? Because they couldn't be. Do you know what I mean? Because actual active politics is so adversarial. Whereas when they become elder statesmen, it was very interesting during the Scottish referendum and the Brexit referendum, how some of our former prime ministers talked with weight. Do you know what I mean? So, but I think that's so that was very interesting.
Do you think the same applies to audiences? Because there's always pressure on to get younger audiences in theatre. And quite here in Manchester, I don't know if it's a Manchester thing, but that never seems to be a problem, particularly at some theatres. Like you mentioned, Hope Mill, one of our new theatres. It's always packed with young people. But do you think sometimes older audiences aren't neglected because of this pressure on trying to get young people in as well?
You mean stuff is programmed that will alienate older audiences?
Yeah, just targeting at them.
Well, I think it's a perennial thing, isn't it? Because there's always this. Ever since I've worked in the theatre, there's always been endless talk about how do you get the young audiences and a new audience in all these different things. I think that can happen. I remember when I was at the Exchange, however, and in fact, pretty much every theatre I've ever worked in, the most adventurous audience was the Wednesday matinee audience, who were nearly always 90% old, and they just came to see everything. Far more open-minded than anybody you'd ever conceive of. That was true when I worked in Chichester, when I worked in Ipswich. I think Manchester's different in that Manchester again is just an extraordinarily vibrant city, and Manchester theatre is constantly reinventing itself in such a way that it stays abreast with the cultural changes. And so I think the younger audience in this city, it's part of their what should we do tonight thing in a way that it's not in some parts of the country. It's fine in London. I think that obviously, there can be productions of, I don't know, a leather bondage production of Importance of Being Earnest, or a rave production of The Rivals might annoy an older audience, but I think in a city like Manchester, everyone mixes, and there's much more of a sense of community in that way. And people want to stay engaged. They like the debate. It's interesting what you say about Hope Mill, because obviously I did a show at 53.2 last year, and Hope Mill, and they're two fantastic venues. I remember when I was first shown Hope Mill, I was used to London fringe venues. Hope Mill, it competes with the best in terms of an environment. And I remember going in to see the play, and the sense of excitement in the air was very wonderful. And I sometimes think that, and the same with what Simon's doing at 53.2, because the pod is a really thrilling space. I haven't worked in the bigger space, but that's where everything reinvents itself in a funny kind of way. And I think young people are always. There's also, I think, there's a gradual change. I think some people find theatres intimidating. Do you know what I mean? So a space like 53.2 or Hope Mill, it takes down. It's like going to the cinema. You just feel informal, so you can have that connection. And it's interesting for me because obviously I worked a lot on the main stage at the Exchange, and but since then I've enjoyed working in smaller spaces. And one of the lovely things about working in the studio at the Exchange was its intimacy and its flexibility. Do you know what I mean? So I remember you could, part of the excitement of going in was you didn't know what space you were going to walk into. And I think that it's often been said one of the reasons why the Exchange was built was that every generation needs a new theatre space to reflect that generation. So I think the fact that there's such a diversity here in Manchester is fantastic. And I mean, home is a lovely environment to come into and watch a piece of theatre in. And so if you want the traditional space, you can go to the Palace. Do you know what I mean? Which is a beautiful theatre. You've got, if you want the round, you've got the Exchange, the grandeur of that. You've got these two spaces which are very warm, and then you've got Hope Mill. I mean, it's fantastic. I honestly can't think of another city outside London which has got the same diversity. No. Although there's a beautiful fringe venue in Newcastle, the Alphabetti, which is like Hope Mill. So there are people setting these things up, and they are kind of happening, which is great. We'd love to open one in Durham. I don't know if any benefactors out there who want to get behind a venue in Durham. So it's a nice problem to have, that we just can't get around all the theatre that happens in Manchester. No, absolutely. With a team of reviewers, we we just miss so much. So where are you going with this theatre company that you've got now? Do you have any other plans for what you've got? Straight after this show, we're about a month after this show, we're doing a couple of Beckett's up in Durham at the Assembly Rooms, which is our theatre with the resident company. We're doing Footfalls and Crap's Last Tape. We're doing them in the as part of the Durham Festival of Arts. And then we've got a barrage of projects that we're kind of mixing and putting in the mix. And the goal really is to use. We always want to have a connection with Manchester. Durham and Manchester is the axis. Taking us, obviously, because we have more connections here. We're further down the road. But the goal is to really build a profile in the northeast as well. So our hope is to start to build a network in both regions, and then ultimately to move to see if we can get to the point where we're touring work across Lancaster and the northeast and Yorkshire. So we're properly a northern company, serving the northern musical accompaniment, serving the whole region. So we've got a mixture of we're looking at all sorts. I'm not going to say what they were because no one else finished them. But we're looking at all sorts of other contemporary plays and a couple of classics that we want to kind of develop and build to take us.
You've got like a laboratory there, building little projects that potentially hopefully will all come to fruition.
Yes, absolutely. To begin with, we're kind of focusing on small scale pieces because that's what we can afford to do. We're hoping that once we get a profile and some backing, we can get a bit bigger.
Jake Murray's production of Jesus Hopped the A-Train for Elysium Theatre Company premieres at the Assembly Rooms Theatre in Durham on the 14th of May 2018, before running at home in Manchester from the 16th to the 19th of May. For more information, see homemcr.org. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.